Hey Collective, it's Alan coming to you with another video that we're accompanying a piece I'm releasing on LinkedIn this afternoon. This centers around a sacred topic that I really wanted to bring to the forefront of many people's minds. And I wanted to specifically focus on the YouTube audience, bringing you on board by explaining what the piece was about and then bringing everybody towards the realization of how the wisdom came to be. And essentially what the piece centers around is the reality check of that souls experience their physical avatars in a hall of mirrors type of scenario. Essentially meaning that everything that we interact with during the coursework of our life or during the trajectory of our lives is a reflection of either strengths or weaknesses that we encounter in other people until we learn to identify that they are there representing something that we might need to look inwards for and try to figure it out, or are somehow guiding you along your journey. And one of the things that I really wanted to focus on the piece was to empower the viewer or the reader to understand that there's no wrong place to ever be along the journey. In fact, I would say that when you become self-aware and you start to realize that what you are interacting with and the people that you are attracting to are part of your lesson plan, that it suddenly puts you into a much more empowered state where you can then operate with the world and start to move up the ascension ladder, understanding clearly that it's not there to hurt you, but it's there to test your resolve to truly get to know yourself and see yourself most clearly. Hence the depiction of the Hall of Mirrors, right? Because when you think of a Hall of Mirrors, one of the things I couldn't get to in the written form that I really want to speak to in the video is you understand that in a Hall of Mirrors, it can be sometimes like a fun house where there's some form of distortion along your journey, and your path is to make your way through it without bumping into the wrong reflections or not focusing your energy in the wrong areas so as to make your way through the maze. And so it's a clear depiction of the spiritual path of any evolutionary soul that is moving through the school. Understanding that if you live in the environment or in the victimization that you are a prisoner, then you are always the victim to something else. And you're never truly looking at what it is that they are representing in your life. And so there's almost like a disempowered state that comes with that. But for those who believe they are a student within the academy, it begins to build this resilience within them to analyze the people, places, and situations they come in contact with and to see what it is that they are trying to reflect back onto you. Meaning that the more evolved that we get as souls, the more we begin to identify the oneness of all of us and realizing that we are all aspects to the great architect in one way, shape, or form, whether masculine or feminine. And as we make our journeys, we encounter other people and situations that are reflective of where we are on the evolutionary ladder. And the best way to equate this in a way that's well-grounded is to just think back to when you're a child and the inability that you have to speak and really move around. And so you're always constantly crying, you're trying to express yourself, you're trying to figure something out, and then you get to the terrible twos, is what they call it, where you actually begin to have motion and you're verbalizing, and now you're actually saying exactly what it is that you were crying about before, but now you have your voice. And the path of your life is to find your voice, find who you are, see your reflection truly for how strong or how empowered you are, whoever you are, and work through the shadows that come with that cross to bear. And so in that reflection, you start to then look at the school analogy once more in a fresh pair of eyes from the lens of looking at it from, well, how does that then operate? A soul then begins to equate itself in kindergarten and first grade with other like-minded individuals. And though it may seem like it's based on just physical appearance, it actually has a lot to do with personality traits. And you start to realize that some are more isolatory and introverted, where some other children are more extroverted and more willing to go out and take challenges and do things differently. But they attract like-minded energy in the Hall of Mirrors, and they begin to group themselves together. And as they develop, they begin to reflect that even stronger as they begin to go through the struggles and the strains that come with climbing the mountain. And it's one of the beautiful things about our school, right? Because once you go from elementary school, you go into puberty, and that changes everything. That's one of the biggest mountains a soul can then kind of overcome, is trying to find itself and having the strangest experiences known to man. Their body begins to change. It's like magic. All of a sudden, you're now involved in guys starting to like girls, or their sexual organs are starting to develop, and then you have guys liking guys, girls liking girls, and it begins to individuate. And as you go through that junior high phase, you realize how individuated, now looking back, that we got and trying to find our identity. And you realize that it is part of the evolution of the Hall of Mirrors. You are reflected with the same pool of students that are at your grade level. And you begin to become identified and programmed into understanding that what you're looking for is the right cliques and groups, which then manifests into a high school experience, which then is another part of the maze, which is the Hall of Mirrors, which then begins to reflect the insecurities and the fears that you have. If you really think back to why we begin to be lost, we begin to lose ourselves, so to speak, in high school, it's because we begin to be socialized into conditioning of trying to understand what is our vibration, what is matching us. And as we go, we're bumping into other distorted mirrors of ourselves that maybe aren't exactly who we are, but we go through this place where we either gain strength in our voice or we lose our voice a little bit in order to fit into the greater scope of things. To then evolve to the next level where you go to college and you truly begin to reevaluate who you are and you start to begin to stand in your power before making the choice of what field of study you're going to be incurring for the rest of your life, which can be a bit of a challenge at such a young age. But again, you're then evolving into the next level of the Hall of Mirrors. You're basically asserting to the world that your specialty or your focus is going to need like-minded individuals, and you begin to form foundations, organizations, and you begin to work with other people who reflect back onto you where you are on the evolutionary ladder, right? People who are really motivated by money will seek business type of things, or they will be drawn to that type of motivation, but they will begin to incur and to surround themselves with people who reflect that drive in life. Whereas those of us who are a little bit more humble will begin to look at life in a different lens, and we begin to attract more free-minded people, and we begin to look for our soul tribes in different arenas. And as that polarization begins to build, we begin the next part of the Hall of Mirrors, which is learning to really find what it is that we value truly, and learning that love trumps all things. And as you begin that journey, you begin to ascend new levels, new devils, and you begin to see darker aspects of yourself. And the Hall of Mirrors becomes a little bit more trying for you, because you start to realize that when you look into a stranger's eyes, you are looking at the divine looking back at you. But what is it that it's reflecting to you? A person who loves to drink will go to a bar and will surround themselves with other people who like to drink. A person who is a pill popper will surround themselves energetically with other people who have other vices, because there's a camaraderie in the Hall of Mirrors that you're identifying that which you know the most. Or you begin to realize that people that trigger you are somehow there to teach you something. And though it's involuntary for the most part as you begin to realize that they do serve a purpose, which is, why are we handing our power away and being triggered by another human being when they're just reflecting something that we are having a response to? And it's the involuntary reaction that we have that allows bullying and allows other things to make us feel insecure and fearful, and makes us feel like we have to be rageful or angry. And as we begin to move through the Hall of Mirrors, you realize that you're working through anger itself. And as you develop as a soul, you begin to really value what triggers you, because you begin to realize that it's the shadow part of you that is obscuring your truth. It's not allowing you to see what you need to work on. It's not allowing you to see the value of what they're bringing to you. If something happens to you and you don't use your voice, then it may happen again. Like looking back at people who have been into really troubled homes where they've been beaten or something. It isn't until they stand up for themselves and somehow do something empowered to move away from that they stop attracting that same energy. It's that mindset of people who, like, let's say psychologically have been beaten or something by their parents. They might then attract, unless they have resolved the issue, they might then attract a man or woman that is abusive to them, because they haven't resolved that shadow that is being reflected onto them, and that is not blaming the victim. I'm just putting a better perspective on it to empower the viewer and the reader to understand that you have an opportunity, and no matter what situation you have, to make the best of it. And the reason this whole thing came about is because I was thinking back on Plato's allegory of the cave, and that mindset that people have where they feel like they are imprisoned in the Earth Academy. They don't want to be here. And you see them struggle throughout their entire life, because it's almost like they've been indoctrinated into believing that you must avoid the shadow. You must not have emotions. You must not do this. You must not do that. And the more that they push it down, the more they become imprisoned to ideologies or to thought processes that don't really reflect where they need to go, and they get stuck. And when you get stuck, it begins to make you feel imprisoned, even if it's just in your own mind, or even it's in the way that you interact with the world. Why aren't you getting the promotions? Why aren't you attracting the right people? It's because we're not analyzing what it is that's attracting that energy in the Hall of Mirrors, because it's reflecting back on you exactly what your course load for that year. It's giving you exactly what you need to do. It's just that we're not facing it because we're told not to deal with the shadow, right? People like to silence the shadow. They want to get rid of the shadow. They don't want to deal with the shadow. But you can never evolve if you don't start to relate to those parts of you and deal with them. You can't squash it. So how do you empower yourself to be able to deal with them? Because when you do, you begin to not react to other people's shadows who share that shadow. Meaning that if someone comes at you in a big ball of rage and you've worked through your own anger, you're not going to respond to them in anger. It's going to be an indifferent response to them. You stop reacting because you're seeing yourself more clearly with each step that you go. And the power behind the Hall of Mirrors is to make your way through the maze and not get stuck into whatever situation you're born into or that you've been put into. And it's a super sacred moment that I would tell students within the Great Earth Academy that would be my single thread of advice for everyone, is to understand that everything that you encounter and everything that you go through throughout your life is teaching you something. But until you become self-aware enough to try to figure out what it is that they are reflecting, you will never be able to move on to the next grade level. And you will never be able to ascend the ladder that we're meant to go on in order to relieve ourselves of the physical avatar and move back into who we're meant to be. Because at the end of the journey, if done well, you leave the cave. And this is a super important part that played back to Plato in his allegory of the cave. It doesn't matter to me if I am in a cave because I've learned to make the best of whatever I have. So more than likely, through the Hall of Mirrors, I will find myself and I will exit the cave because I learned to look for the best of any situation and I learned to operate within whatever confines I have in order to figure out the puzzle that then opens up the door to let me out of the cave. And then I go into a cavern. And then in the cavern, I figure out what it is I need to learn in that cavern, and I begin the process of then leaving the cavern into the wilderness. And in the wilderness, I then have to figure out another set of situations and scenarios in which I'm empowered to figure out what it is that I'm trying to gain from the experiences that I'm having. And some of them are incredibly hurtful and torrential to my life and have destroyed me in different aspects. And I begin the journey to then identify, well, where did that come from? What was I trying to do? And how did I get myself in those situations? Empowerment, 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 empowerment. So then when people reflect those traits and being lost at those places, instead of me being judgmental on them, in the Hall of Mirrors, I begin to see them more clearly. And I begin to differentiate between drones and people who are teachers. And I begin to see that everyone has value in the Great Earth Academy and that everyone is the divine having a different adventure at any given moment. And when I've worked through my own shadow and whatever I've done to put myself in these places, situations, or dealing with these people, I begin to evolve out of attracting them. And I begin to attract other energy that then tests me in other ways. And so I then move from the wilderness, which is the spiritual part where you go into the desert and all of that stuff, and you have to find yourself. It's why you become so alone. It's why you're isolated. It's why most of us go into hermit mode, is because we're learning who we truly are. Because the day that we can make it through the maze and can see ourselves clearly for who we are is the day that other people will be able to see your truth. And on that day is the day you are blessed with graduation to be with your tribe and with your people. Because you have found yourself. You have found your strength. And though you may still get triggered occasionally along the way, they become far less and it becomes much more interesting to you to re-engage the world through the new lens. Because now you start studying other people and you begin to find them fascinating because you can see in them you. And when you see that, you begin to grow compassion and empathy and you become what's called a leader. You become a conscious leader. You become a trendsetter, an influencer. How? Because your energy is pure. You have purified yourself enough to know what your shadow is as best as you can. And though it will keep coming up, you've learned to not react to it in a way that tries to suppress it. Instead, you just kind of look at it and go, okay, well, this is similar to the last thing I did. Oh, okay, I have to figure this out, and blah, 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 blah. But notice that as you're making your way through the Hall of Mirrors, you are encountering different reflections of you that can be distorted. And part of the process when you're in the hermit mode is discernment. Realizing what is toxic for you that may pull you back down, and what is reflective of a higher principle that you are aspiring to reach. and you begin to then focus your energy on that which you ingest the most, which is why in the piece I had written that you are what you eat. It's not just what you eat physically, it's what you ingest with your eyes, it's what you ingest with your ears, it's what you ingest with your touch. It's all of the senses are ingesting information, but only you can decide what resonates with you, and you can then repel energy without interacting with it anymore. And instead you find yourself empowered to stand in your place, be who you are, and when people see the truth of you, they are attracted to you if they're of that vibration. And that is what people talk about vibrational. When you match someone vibrationally, they're talking about it's not personal, it's vibrational. Someone who I used to be very close to as a child may not be my vibration later in life. And it's nothing personal, it just has to do with my ingestion of what I want to experience in the world has ascended to a new level. And I'm willing to deal with the leap of faith required of moving up. It's just something that you have to do internally, but you only really can do that when you're on the path of self-discovery and the mission of self-actualization. So each of us will have different traits and different personalities. We're all different aspects to the great architect. We're like a rainbow. It's why we're called human, HUE-MAN. We come in different shapes, sizes, and forms. Each of us have different things to bring to the table, but when we're in right alignment, we begin to only attract the people that truly resonate with us, and we begin to realize that we're working towards the same mission. For example, my big fascination lately has been studying specific people that I find to be archetypal to what I resonate with. And being a Catholic, for me, I can specifically say that I look for people who have archangel tropes or archangel manifestations. There are aspects of them that remind me of Archangel Michael, or remind me of Archangel Gabriel, or Archangel Raphael, or Archangel Uriel. You know, all of them, all seven of them. But that's something that I didn't know I was looking for until I was starting to realize that I was indeed in a mirror ball, which is why some elites refer to the sun as a mirror ball. Because when you can see into the sun directly, the sun can see you, and your life begins to transform in incredible amounts. It's like coming out of the cocoon and seeing light for the first time, only now you're ingesting it at the right vibration, and it changes the way you view the world. And when that happens, you then begin to identify other people who resonate with whatever archetypal structure you admire or that you enjoy, because you're working towards that vibration. But they won't ever truly understand who you are until you stand in the hall of mirrors and have discerned the different aspects of yourself to where you can at least control your reaction to it and understand that it's always going to be there. But how do you then convert that into positivity, right? Someone who has a really great passionate lifestyle, who's a very passionate person, when aligned with their soulmate or specifically their twin flame, will find an outlet for that energy, and it will be powerful. And I'm going to get to why I know this further down the video. And the same was true for someone who has a lot of anger. Someone who has a lot of anger that they've worked through but still has that energy signature, someone like a Mars type of figure, like if you think of the planet Mars, that's kind of combustible and kind of, if they find the right avenue for that outlet, meaning they become a lawyer to stop children being raped and stuff like that, then their drive is concentrated in an area that is beneficial to society, and other people begin to see that quality in them. And when that truth ignites, that passion has an outlet. It's part of the Hall of Mirrors, right? And so then you begin to identify organizations, places, and a new zest on life, which is guiding you somewhere you may not know. And along that journey, you begin to do what I've been doing, which is studying key people that remind me of the archetypal structure I respond to, which as a Catholic is the archangels. So for you, it could be someone else. It could be whatever your place setting is, right? I never judge somebody who makes a lot of money for themselves. Someone who is grounded in the 3D, who's an emperor, who has a lot of money, I don't know, billions of dollars, who then goes and does something for charity, I think is beautiful. And I will never not be attracted to that energy. But as a soul signature, I'm looking for the big JC qualities. I'm looking for the great Mary Magdalene qualities. I'm looking for the archangel characteristics, because that is what I naturally was raised on and what I am responding to. But I can't ever see that unless I work through my own shadow, because people can present masks, and you're going to have to, along the Hall of Mirrors, identify who's wearing a mask and not cast judgments on them, because you will understand that you too have worn masks in the past. I was gay my whole life, and I hid it for a long time. So for me, if I see somebody who's wearing a mask, I immediately go, well, I'm not going to judge that person because I can see them clearly. They're hiding pain, or they're hiding insecurity, or and it changes their ability to change the way that I see the world. I'm empowered. I don't let other people tell me what's up and what's down. I know what's up and what's down because I've done the coursework. But understand that as you go through each evolutionary model, as you go through each grade level, you are going to be interacting with tests so that you can change the test to a testimony. How can you be blessed? How can your blessings come if you don't learn the lessons that come with that? The reward cycle that many of us are heading into is based on having done the work. And so that's why the piece was so centered on giving students the understanding that you're in a hall of mirrors. Some of the greatest struggles that I've ever had have been aspects of fear within myself. Things that have nothing to do with my core values, but that are reflective of me needing to find my voice. And it's pushed me to do things that I never thought I would do. It's how I went from California back to Louisiana. It's because I became such an introvert during the beginning process of my spiritual journey that I started to retract from the world and I was no longer engaging it, which meant I wasn't learning. I was stuck. So the only thing I could do was change my position, change my environment, and I immediately went back to New Orleans because I had some, relatives there that could stay with at the beginning. And it was super trying and super hard, but it made me do something I didn't want to do. It made me into an extrovert, and here's what I mean: strategy. You see, here I was a customer service manager, a training manager. I was like in middle management, and I wasn't happy. And so there, I had to face something. They don't really have that economy at the time that I was there. I had to do the impossible. I had to work in the service industry. And I did not want to work back in the service industry. But something gleamed my eye, which was, if I can make my way from the ground up, then I will learn the lessons needed to be a bartender, which is an extremely exerted effort. You're always on stage, you run the show, everybody has a good time or a bad time dependent on you, and for an introvert, it fucking terrified me. Guess what I did? I worked my way right up to it, and I did it for 8 years over there as a bartender. And the rule I had is I don't care what's going on in my personal life. And I was doing drugs every day back in those days. I don't care what's going on in my life. I don't care how I feel. The moment I crossed this threshold into this office, for me to the restaurant or to the bar, I was on. Game on. Nobody knew what was going on. I had to get into it. And it taught me resilience in adversity. And it also left me the opportunity to have the abundance needed to start endeavoring into taking also time off to start digging deep into my shadow. Why was I doing drugs? What was I trying to hide? And for me, it was sexual addiction. I needed validation. And so I had to work through that shadow. And once I got through that shadow, suddenly I stopped wanting to do drugs as much because I realized I was basically paying for other people to party to be with me. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm the fucking prize. And my ego started to finally flame because I am the most humble person. Trust me, it took me forever to even think I was attractive. The sound of my own voice used to drive me crazy. It was a hard path because I'd been conditioned to feel like I could never be anybody or do anything. And it turned out that I had to do the internal work to then start to beget situations that made me come up. And so understand that it's a journey and you have a lot to work through. But until you're willing to look at the pain, until you're willing to look at the shadow, eye to eye, then the devil always has a playground in your head. And so there's distorted mirrors that you're going to encounter that trigger reactions out of you that may not leave you in the best light. And it's the difference between finding grace and working towards grace. A graceful person has a diplomacy that people who are not at that level may find a little bit sidesteppy. But to someone who lives in the grace or has found themselves fully and can see themselves clearly in the mirror, realizes there's something called diplomacy, which is in order to operate in a shadow realm like the earth, you have to encounter the shadow. You don't have to dance with the devil, and you can set boundaries, but first you have to realize what those things are. And the only way to do that is to push every button of your own, face it in the hall of mirrors, see it clearly for what it is, and discern what is yours and what is someone else's and what you're willing to put up with and what you're not. But it takes an incredible amount of self-analysis and self-awareness to walk through the hall of mirrors and not respond to the distorted views and opinions of others, which is why they always say that. And I said it in the piece. Why are you handing your power away in responding to other people who can't even see the truth of you anyway? And you can always tell this type of behavior because they're super judgmental of other people. And you remember that in high school you may have been a popular person, or if you weren't, you were the victim of it. So you understand the dynamic, and if it becomes toxic and if they get stuck, then it becomes part of their narrative, but that doesn't define you. And until you see yourself clearly, you won't be able to navigate through those seas, and you won't be able to identify the people that you then really belong with. And so what I've been doing lately, and this is like just a testament to you all, is whenever I see another human being, I smile at them. I don't expect anything of them because I'm sending positive energy because that's who I am. It's just organic to who I am. I don't make that shit up. It's just, I have my bad days occasionally and everybody knows it because my energy spreads quickly. But for the most part, I greet every day with, I'm going to have a great day. It's going to be really rewarding. I know shit might go down, but with the shit I've been through in life, it's going to be fine. We're going to get through it. And the day usually goes very well. But what I learned to do is when I see people that have their head down and they make eye contact, I smile. And when I smile, I don't just smile. I don't send any intention of them having to smile back. But instead, I smile with intention of giving them a compliment about something. So what I've learned to do in the Hall of Mirrors is to reflect back onto someone something that I enjoy about them. Let's say that they have a cute hairdo that day. As I smile, I don't say anything. Instead, in my head, I go, oh, that's cute hair. I really like that hair. Or I like something about them. I like their shoes. I like whatever it is, but I keep it in my head. And what I'm playing with is the energy within the Hall of Mirrors, and I'm illustrating to the universe that I believe in the beauty of the world and so forth. It's not manipulative. It's just a natural response that happens when you begin to see yourself clearly and understand that my greatest strength might be my naivety. Other people might really like my naive nature when it comes to spirituality. And sometimes I get myself into trouble. And the right people are going to look at me and they're going to protect me. And so what am I truly afraid of? If I'm going to stand in my power atop the mountain, then I realize there are going to be other mountains. But at the end of the day, as long as I show up every day as myself and I can see myself clearly, then I'm succeeding in life. And it changes my mindset into a really positive stance from which to look outwardly. And it changes the way that I look at the world and why I get the wisdom and the pieces to the puzzle the way that I do. I don't believe anybody's more special than anybody else. I believe that everybody has divine gifts and it's just about finding them that really matters. If you can identify where your strengths are, which are usually what other people try to feed off of you and make you feel bad about, if you can look at them more analytically, take the emotion out of the responses you're having from other people, and realize that it actually truly is something that can be a game changer for you, then you empower yourself in ways that other people may then covet. But that's their insecurity. By the time that you're in the Hall of Mirrors and understand that they are just reflecting an insecurity, it's not yours anymore. So you immediately let that person go, like, okay, well, I'm not for everybody. Not everybody's going to like me, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I don't need to be in a clique. Remember, I've gone through the hermit mode. I can live by myself for the rest of my life. I don't really want to do that, but I mean, it's not going to be a big deal. If that's the coursework that I have this lifetime, I've resolved to just let it be. Go with the flow. And if someone doesn't like you and you're no longer insecure, then you don't react to them. Instead, it's almost like a bullet that just goes, okay, well, that was a bad shot. And sometimes you don't even notice that people are sending hate your way because you're not at that vibration. It's almost like they can't even register you. And it's not something you're doing. It's just you've done the work within yourself to stand in an empowered state to be less reactionary to other people and to situations, right? I became homeless after having a lot of money, and that destroyed my self-confidence for a while. Look at me now. I could care less if I become, I don't want to go back, but I'm not afraid of it. And that release of fear had a lot to do with having to do the work. Okay, how did I get here? Okay, yeah, COVID was a factor, but how else did I, you know what I mean? I had to take full accountability for everything I've done. And I'm still a student. People say that I'm also a teacher. That's great, but a teacher is always a student. And so I'm always going to be learning, but what I ingest now is different. In the Hall of Mirrors, I'm not looking for drones. I'm not looking for people who spread hate and intolerance. They're going to be there. That's part of the shadow. Where there's light, there's shadow. The two exist. Where there's yin, there's yang. And what I started to focus my energy on was other like-minded people who understand that they have shadow, but understand the value of people who have worked through their shadow and helping other people get through the shadow that they have overcome. And the best way to do that is to share your stories and so forth. So my attention during this period now has been heavily focused on specific people who remind me of very key people that I respect and admire spiritually. and like the Buddha, like people who have Buddha principles or live a Buddhist life, or someone who really believes in the archangels and stuff like that is really attractive to me. Someone who is of Christian faith, obviously I'm very fond of because I'm Catholic. Yeah, I may be gay and I may not be liked by the church because I don't, I'm not dogmatic, but it doesn't mean God doesn't love me. And I call him the great architect. But the point is, we all have a foundation from which to stand on, and mine has become strong enough that I can now see myself clearly. And so what I'm looking for is someone who can mirror that. And the whole piece came about from that one thing. So if you guys look at my coursework, at the stuff that I've left behind, both in written and video form, it's been benchmarks. And when you're in the Hall of Mirrors, you don't always know that what you're leaving yourself is clues for your own soul or for other people to follow. And what I mean is, if you guys go back for the past 3 months, we've been talking about the school analogy, and we've been working with that, but it's been building upon itself with different dreams and different things that my subconscious is now in alignment with my consciousness, and as they work through it, have become something not mysterious, but rather clear to me. And this particular post about the Hall of Mirrors specifically came about from the dream I had, in which I knew I had arrived at a clear understanding of this principle when I suddenly woke up in my dream. And, well, before I go into this, just understand that some of us, when we go to sleep, we're awake as a soul, and then when the soul goes to sleep, we're awake as a human. That's the way that I operate. When I go to bed, I'm always taking a lecture, I'm always in training, I'm always taking a class, I'm always learning something new. And it's like a wealth of information that I'm very open to, and I understand the difference between fatigue. I understand that because the soul's awake doesn't mean the body's going to have a response, but it took an adjustment period, which if you guys look at the recent videos, you'll know that I went through that. And it was really exhausting for me because my mind couldn't wrap itself around the fact that I didn't ever turn off. I was always on. I remember I've had dreams where I had to go to do paperwork. I had to go and deal with some stuff for the boss, and I was in like my office, and I'm sitting there in the dream, and I'm working on correspondence back to people who I haven't gotten back because I'm here in the school. And I was like, what the hell is that? So there is constantly always something going on in my head. It's kind of magical. But at the time, I felt very fatigued, and I had to work through it. But the point is, in this particular dream that happened this past week, I woke up in the dream, and I was going to the bathroom. And I was trying to get ready, I guess, for a date or work, which might be feeding into what I'm about to say later. But one of the things that happened is that I went and I was looking and trying to shave. And for the shave, you need a mirror. And the first mirror I got was slightly broken, and I couldn't see my full face in it. And so I put that mirror down. And so the next mirror I was looking at was shattered somehow. And it was broken, but still I could see myself, but it wasn't the best way to shave. I didn't want to cut myself. So I put that mirror down. Then I looked at a mirror that was like all misty, like all covered in like soot or something, and I didn't have time to clean it. So I put that mirror down. And then suddenly I look up and I see myself perfectly clearly looking back at me. And as I'm looking at it, I'm starting to stir awake. Usually the way it works, if it's something super poignant, I begin to wake up so that I remember it. But one of the things I do to anchor the dream to understand it fully is that I always am mid-sentence talking about what I'm seeing as I'm waking up. So I see myself clearly, and the first thing out of in the dream that I said is, but I've seen myself clearly for quite some time. And as I said that, the mirror came closer to me, and I realized there was someone else looking at me clearly. And I woke up saying something that played back to a sentence I had said to my ex, one of my exes from the past. I had said to him, I said, my greatest dream is that one day someone will be able to see the truest part of me and love me unconditionally. And on that day, I will look into their eyes, and I will know that their eyes see me clearly. And on that day, I will know I've met my match. And I woke up saying this. So I immediately realized that I am coming into divine union with another person where we see each other. And it had a lot to do with the Hall of Mirrors. It had to do with the realization that I was looking for this quality in another person, and that someone I was reviewing fit that bill. And I could see that he probably could see me clearly. And I'm going to tell you something. I got up that day. I had that in my head. I went, okay, that makes sense. And I'm like, I don't know who it is, because I'm surrounded by straight guys. I'm one of them. I always tell people I'm like protected because like I feel like somebody like like if you're a divine being or someone who's of light, you're surrounded by people who love you, and you're very protected because it's just you bring energy and positivity to the world, and so people want to make sure that you're always good. But all my friends are straight. So like this doesn't make any sense to me because according to the dream, someone now sees me clearly and is loving what they see and that we are coming together, but the people around me are all straight. So I go about my day. I'm kind of befuddled by the situation, but not in a bad way. I'm just like, well, I don't know. I released it to the God in the universe of like, well, whatever's gonna happen because it doesn't really make sense unless someone's wearing a mask. And so I'm just like, whatever. I can't, I can't pull other people's masks on. It's their journey to self-discovery. So that I don't know what's going on. So I'm there and I'm minding my own business, and I think I'm like washing dishes after that. And this is where it gets hysterical. Out of nowhere, I thought of somebody. A random name popped in my head. And the sheer amount of energy that came pouring through my body was hysterically funny. I'm talking about, if this is true of the divine union, y'all are going to need a room. It reminded me of the energy I felt. It reminded me of when Bella and Edward are in their home or whatever it is. And Edward recants the story about how when Rosalie and Emmett got together, they couldn't be anywhere near them for a solid decade. That was the energy. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, what is happening? It was the idea of this person. And I felt like maybe my energy had connected with them. And so I was slightly confused by it because of the fact that we've never crossed this threshold or whatever it was. So, but I thought it was really funny because I have friends that have that type of energy. So I thought for a minute that it was there, but I'm like, no, he's straight as an arrow. That's not going to be it. And I realized that it's someone that I've been looking at, and it was a cosmic connection. It was something very strong. So what I'm going to say in this, for those of you who have this trajectory, is when you see yourself clearly, you begin to attract the person that will see you. And when that person sees you, it's game on. And what I'm supposed to say from the dream that followed that yesterday is that it will be in the touch, and it will be in the eyes. And you were going to have to cross the threshold of whatever the insecurity is that's blocking this from happening right now. Because the energy that came through was so powerful that it reminded me of the part where I said in the last video I had done, where when the sun meets the moon and they fall in love with each other, that the moon pulls something out of them like passion and the sun explodes into its energy. That's the power behind the energy that I'm talking about. So it reminded me of the divine union conundrum, which is the fact that when divine unions come into contact with each other and they begin to see each other clearly and they understand that they're on the same mission for freedom, they're on the same mission for free will and for freedom of speech, and they're working on it from different lenses. They may be complete opposites in some ways, but yet their mission is the same. When that begins to identify, they begin to connect with each other, and it begins to create this amount of energy where I'm just saying, like, you're going to need some time, guys. Like, if this is your storyline, I'm going to say this. You're going to need, a couple of days off just to, spend some quality time getting to know each other. Because it's an incredible amount of creation energy that is coming through the both of you. And so I realized it was probably having to do with my counterpart, so I would just say this. Good times. But it had to do with the fact that I understood the Hall of Mirrors and that I can now see the person clearly and they obviously can see me. But one of the things that happens when you get into this vibration, when you're at this particular level, it reminds you of when you join a family, you don't just marry one of us, you marry all of us. And because all of my friends and the people in my actual life are all straight, unless it's someone watching, it doesn't quite fit with my life because I'm surrounded by all straight guys. But it might be someone observing me through camera and that I'm very aware of and that I want to work with, but it hasn't manifested yet. So as I'm going through the energy, what I started to realize is it might need me to picking up on other people at this vibration. And the reason I said that is because whoever this particular masculine was has a fear so ingrained into them of losing the person that they now know is their mate. They know it's the one. They have no idea how to muster the energy and the confidence to break through because they don't know how to either cross the threshold of friendship or cross the threshold of love, or maybe they don't know each other physically, but they know each other socially, or they know each other through media. Somehow they know that they're the other, that they match. But the fear of this masculine is that he'll lose it. It's almost like that thing that I mentioned as a side on the last video where I had mentioned that sometimes the greatest fear that anyone can overcome in life is their divine union, is their forever kingdom spouse, all of those principles, because it's the fear of losing them that prevents you from even trying, because you're like, well, it's just not going to work out. Where you're carrying the baggage of ex relationships forward, not realizing that this is the dream you've always had. This masculine, and it might be all of you actually, it might be like a collective thing. This masculine has gone through a lot. And this masculine has somehow managed to be successful in this world against all odds. And he does it in a very natural way. He's a leader. It's just who he is. Strong, masculine energy. Something about the interaction now is engaging this energy in a different way. And they are very aware that this is their mate. But they're deathly afraid of losing this person. And it's preventing them in many ways from psychologically doing the one thing they need to do, which is just say hi. Hello, nice to meet you. Would you like to go out for coffee? Would you like to? I know this is out of left field. I'm your friend, but I really, really am into you. And I think this could go somewhere. And allow the other person to then be abso-fucking-lutely, because if it's you, again, hello, you'll know. It's the world's in the palm of your hands, and if you know, you know. That energy will respond to the other energy. And the eyes will be the windows to the soul. And if the one soul is reflecting back on what I saw in the mirror, which remember was another person looking at me clearly, if that's the truth, then it is indisputable. And no one is ever going to come between you two again. It's the twin flame thing. And I realized in the moment what was happening is that the energy I was feeling is what a twin flame would do, which is ignite the passion of creation in the other person. And they become each other's muse. And they somehow develop quickly with each other. And they bring out the best traits, reminding the person of everything they've overcome, and somehow healing things that other people would normally not be able to heal. Someone who's been through the worst of life suddenly finds their mate and has never had a win in their life, suddenly gets the dream lover, the dream partner, the dream husband or wife, is going to be terrified that it's short-lived because they've never experienced a win. It wasn't in their lesson plan until the ultimate win. And so the passion that you all are going to be feeling if you're in the twin flame dynamic is passion. It's the ignition of the fire that goes up the chakras. And as it comes up, it's cementing you into having to come together with each other. Otherwise, like a volcano, you're just going to explode. You know what I mean? And it's better. And if you're at this vibration, you understand. You're gonna end up having to make the move anyway. So be advised that you guys seem to be syncing up, and part of that is going to entail you guys having some personal time to not only spend the sharing of the energies together because you're creating the wheel motion. Whatever you guys are going to be doing with that energy of creativity, for some of you who are straight, it might be super fertile. When you two come together, you might have babies back to back. I mean, fertility, it has different forms and different shapes. And at this vibration, if you're understanding what the whole of mirrors is, this person now mirrors something in you, and if it's the mission in life, then it engulfs that mission. And not only is it sexually compatible, and you guys are going to rock the world, I'm telling you, like, this energy has the capability. If there's enough divine unions put into the world, it will change the vibration for everybody. You will know when these people come together. Because in a world that's filled with so much darkness, loathing, hatred, and intolerance, the one thing that can change the world is love. And this level of love is so divinely driven that it not only is going to infuse you with energy because you have met your twin. You have met your counterpart. It kind of goes back to that mythology. You guys remember that we learned back in school that there were souls that were divided in two, and they could be man, woman, and man and woman, and that they would spend the rest of their journeys possibly looking for each other throughout each lifetime, and depending on what the situations, they could end up being best friends, brothers, sisters, they could end up lovers. Sometimes it'll work out, sometimes it won't work out, because you're trying to figure out your own shadow. And until you deal with your shadow, you can't really come into divine union, because then when you come into divine union, you start helping other people deal with their shadow. Right? Up, and then wow. And then the two of you present outwardly. But it's a courting. And as you guys court each other, just be advised, masculines and feminines, that you will feel each other. And it's incredibly important to stay grounded with such energy. Because yes, you're going to be sharing it sexually and compatible. I mean, like I said, like it reminded me of that whole Emmett and Rosalie needed a decade to be together. And probably for those of you, if this is your forever spouse, you leave the academy hand in hand with this person and you go on into immortality or whatever you believe in afterwards. But you're leaving the academy together. So you do not need to worry once you come into contact with each other and once you understand, oh, I was right, this is it, this is them. Everyone else begins to fade out. I'm not talking about friends and stuff, but I'm talking about any other possibilities cannot interrupt this dynamic. You two are solid. You're the twin. No one else will compare to the twin. But be advised that you're sending out your energy to your counterpart. And it's almost like you start forming a form of telepathy energetically where you are now engaging the Hall of Mirrors very clearly with another person. And so the communication, there's no lag, it's no distortion, the energy is going back and forth, and just be advised it's a super spiritual principle. But if this is you, understand that don't like leave the feminine or the masculine if you're sending the energy, whoever's sending it. Don't leave the other person suddenly carrying this energy and walking around the world looking like they're in heat. Like, don't sacrifice your relationship out of fear of approaching them because you're afraid that you're going to lose them and then lose them to someone else who shows up at that right moment who happens to be a soulmate, right? Because if a twin flame dynamic doesn't work out, where it's just not meant to be, he's insecure, he just can't get over his shyness, or she can't get over her insecurities, or whatever the balance, if they can't do that, then it won't work. But then there's always going to be automatically a soulmate, and a soulmate is just as powerful and can be just as potent. But just understand that it's a test. It's the ultimate test for the masculine here, which is you cannot lose this person if you come forward, but you can absolutely guarantee their loss if you don't move forward. Because the energy is so potent that all energy has to find a way out. Just make sure that you, as the creator of the energy coming into union with your counterpart, are together. And everything will work out fine. And so that's basically the trajectory of how this whole piece came to be. In the end, to the students within the academy, understand that there is so much divine purpose to everything we see. Everything has a meaning, everything has purpose. Understanding how it correlates to what you need to learn at any given moment or what you need to grow from or look at will make all the difference to how quickly you ascend through the different levels of the school. Because in the end, what you're searching for is seeking you. Like energy always finds like energy. And the purer you are, I don't mean like just in drugs and stuff, but I mean like the purer you are in what you ingest, keeping the toxins and stuff out of you, people who are hateful, people who are bigoted, turning that shit off, the more you're going to be able to fine tune your signature to be able to see your partner the clearest. And when he makes his move, or when she accepts your offer, your world will explode into technicolor. And every dream you've ever had will somehow come together because you are representing creation itself. And that's where I want to leave this. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed this piece. I had so much fun as a creative creating this because it came from such a deep spiritual place. And I hope you guys enjoy it. And I hope it brings you some wealth of knowledge and something to look forward to. Because this school is pretty badass. Bye.